Alone in the dark, what poor peasants really faced on their desperate journeys. They say the night holds secrets. In the dank, pitch-black corners of the world where shadows breed, peasants braved unthinkable terrors during their desperate journeys. Imagine the gnawing fear that twisted in their guts, every step taken could lead to salvation or doom. Their tired feet tread along treacherous paths, each whisper of wind sounding like a ghostly warning. Will they ever see home again? Under a blood-red moon, the landscape morphed into a sinister playground. Trees, gnarled like the fingers of knotted ancients, seemed to reach down with a malevolent grasp. The air crackled with an unsettling energy. Animal sounds turned into eerie echoes, merging human sighs, gasps, and the crunch of bones, perhaps the remnants of those who didn't escape. Many claimed to have glimpsed shadows dancing between the fog, figures clad in rags, with hollow eyes that promised nothing. As they traveled, a mysterious guide emerged from the depths of the woods. Clad in a tattered cloak, they glided along the path as if floating. Was this figure friend or foe? Some said they were the lost souls of the fallen, helping the living find their way or leading them straight to hell. Each villager glimpsed that fleeting shadow out of the corner of their eyes. Did you see it? If the wind sighed, did it carry secrets? Who were these cursed souls luring them deeper into despair? Heartbeats drummed in unison, fear palpable. Fear turned into a shared, collective whisper among the weary travelers. Did you hear that? What was that noise? Every crack of a twig sent tremors through their spines. Silence wrapped around them like a cold embrace, thick and suffocating. Panic rose like sour bile in their throats. One wrong turn could lead to the clutches of misery, or worse. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The chill deepened. Breathless, they wandered past the ruins of an old village swallowed by dark tales. The once lively community was now just an echo of lost laughter, haunted by what had come before. What catastrophic events led to its demise? Eyes turned wide as they stood before a crumbling tombstone. Words etched into the stone spoke of unspeakable horrors. This was no ordinary burial place. Something wicked festered here. Something that craved souls. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night, sending the traveler sprinting, hearts racing. Who screamed? What lay behind them? Was it the very darkness they had feared? They could feel it creeping, tasting their dread. What horrors awaited them in the murky abyss ahead, ready to snatch their lives away? The winding path ahead twisted and turned like a dark maze. Would they find their way out, or would they become another tale told in hushed whispers? As the shadows lengthened, so did their desperation. What would they lose next? The night thickened, and hope flickered like a dying flame. The air turned icy as an unnatural stillness settled around them, the kind that wraps tightly like a shroud, making each breath feel like a struggle against sleep. Every traveler's heart hammered in their chest, an echo of primal survival instincts urging them to flee, to escape the haunted remnants of the past. But where do you run when the darkness is all around? Just then, an ancient tree loomed ahead, twisted and grotesque. Its branches seemed to writhe, scratching skyward with desperate urgency. The travelers halted in their tracks, fixated on its unsettling presence. What secrets were buried at its roots? Shadows flickered near the base, dancing like flames in the suffocating night. Someone gasped. What is that? A young man stepped forward, drawn toward the haunting sight. The others watched, fear gripping their chests as he knelt. The earth was damp beneath his trembling hands, and as he brushed away the dirt, fragments of bone glinted in the moonlight. Horror washed over the group. We need to leave. A woman cried, her eyes wide with terror. But it was too late. The whispers grew louder, coiling like snakes around their minds. They heard stories of what happened here. Once, long ago, a ritual gone wrong had unleashed something dark and vile that seeped through every crevice in the soil. With each passing second, the bile in their throats rose, choking the remnants of courage they had mustered. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled. "Run!" shouted an elder, his voice filled with urgency that cut through the clamor. They bolted, leaving the haunted tree behind, breaths coming in short, sharp gasps. Back on the path, shadows seemed to stretch farther, clawing at the edges of their sanity. Cool night air turned stifling, pressing down on them like an iron weight. It felt as if the darkness itself was alive, feeding off their fear. Was it just the chill of the night or something more sinister lurking? Without warning, the shadowy figure they thought had merely been an illusion stepped from the depths of a nearby thicket. Its hollow eyes glinted like glass, expression unreadable. "You cannot escape," it rasped, voice echoing with the weight of unnumbered souls. Panic ripped through the group, and as they scrambled to formulate a plan, a disturbing realization began to settle. "What does it want?" one of them muttered, shaking. Would it show them a way out? Or was it here to claim them as the world consumed by darkness had already? Another scream shattered the night, closing in on them from all sides. "This way!" shouted the young man who had knelt by the tree. He faced an uncertain path to the left. Desperation combined with unyielding hope pushed the travelers forward. They could either plunge deeper into the unknown or confront whatever cursed presence awaited them. A lightning flash illuminated the twisted faces of their fears, revealing a horizon where light cascaded in at just the right angle, forming a narrow passage. Hope flickered brighter. But then, just as they were about to flee, a new sound rang out, a low growl emanating from the very ground they stood upon. Was it too late to turn back? Would they fall victim to the darkness, or could they somehow seize their fate? Time hung in the balance as they struggled to decide how to proceed. Each moment stretched on, heavy with haunting uncertainty. And as they hesitated, whispers began to rise again, echoing a promise wrapped in dread. What lay ahead in that fleeting light? Would it offer salvation, or were they destined to become another lost story in the night? The guttural growl coursed through the air, resonating in their bones, thudding like a heartbeat drumming a warning. The young man's heart raced as the decision clawed at his mind. Should they take that flickering path toward a potential exit, or linger in the shadows where something worse awaited? He could feel the eyes of his companions boring into him. Fear pinched at their faces, wide-eyed and frantic. He turned, adrenaline surging. "We have to go now." With shaky legs, he sprinted toward the light, holding on to the thread of hope that guided him, regardless of how flimsy it felt. The others fell in behind him, the darkness clawing at their backs, whispering promises of despair. As they ran, they couldn't shake the sensation that they were not alone. Shadows moved just beyond their peripheries, always teasing, never revealing if they were friends or foes. The air thickened with a palpable dread, each breath a reminder that danger lingered just out of sight. The passage drew nearer, yet that low growl grew louder, vibrating in the very soil beneath them. It sounded as if the earth itself had awakened, angry and unsettled. "What is that thing?" a woman cried from behind. Her voice cracked with panic, adding to the layers of dread saturating the night. "I don't know," the young man shouted, unsatisfied with his own inability to provide comfort. They pushed onward, the narrow light ahead beckoning like a lighthouse in the stormy sea. With every step, desperation fueled in him. He needed to find a way out. And just when he felt a flicker of determination, roots snared at his ankles, dragging him down. He stumbled but caught himself on the trunk of a gnarled tree. Groaning, he fought to free himself from the brambles. "Help! I can't move." His scream echoed into the void, and the growl halted. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating where before chaos had reigned. The group froze, hearing nothing but the frantic beating of their hearts. Moments stretched endlessly, their minds racing with visions of what lay just beyond the dark. The ground trembled, and the whispers escalated into a full-blown chorus, a haunting melody that clawed at their sanity. "Run!" They panted out in unison, as if the word could somehow push them towards safety, away from the horrors creeping closer. In a surge of raw instinct, the others pulled him free. The young man gasped, gratefulness pooling in his chest, for all at once they were united in their fear and the hope that surged as a collective. They resumed their flight, legs pumping hard through the forest, pressing onward to the unknown, but suddenly, the figure, now looming larger, emerged into the dim light. "You cannot escape," its voice echoed like a broken record, shaking their souls. The depth of its tone seemed to twist reality, as if it were a living embodiment of their darkest fears. A cold sweat slicked their skin, and a woman shrieked, "What do you want from us?" "Your journey has just begun," it replied, and beneath those words lay a promise of torment not seen, just felt. Desperation clawed at them, but they couldn't afford to let it consume them. They had to jump through the fading light. They had to destroy the grip fear held over them. And then, just as they raced toward the edge of darkness and light, the ground beneath them exploded with unearthly energy, lifting them off their feet. Were they leaping into the unknown or falling into a trap? Time paused as they grasped whatever they could reach, fear pulling them down as hope urged them forward. What awaited them on the other side? Was there a path to salvation or merely another nightmare? The world spun wildly around them, colors swirling into a dizzying blur. Voices mixed and melded, merging into a cacophony that drowned out reason. When the light finally embraced their bodies, a sharp jolt grounded them, colliding them back into reality. They tumbled onto a cold, hard surface, disoriented and gasping for breath. As the haze lifted, the young man glanced around. They were in a dimly lit chamber, the walls pulsating with an unnatural glow that felt both comforting and terrifying. He could see his companions, faces lined with fear and confusion, blinking as they adapted to their new surroundings. "What just happened?" The woman from before stammered, her voice trembling. Did we make it?" Another voice chimed in, quivering with hope just like their own hearts. "Not yet," he said, pulling himself to his feet. "We're still trapped somehow." With determination, he forced his legs to carry him, urging his friends to follow. As they ventured deeper into the chamber, the air shifted, filling their lungs with a thick sweetness that made them feel lightheaded. A flickering light from the far end of the room caught their attention, illuminating a path that drew them closer with sinister grace. Each cautious step echoed, amplifying the horrors trapped within their minds. The ground pulsated beneath them like a heartbeat, steady yet unnervingly alive. The whispers returned, now clearer and laced with malicious glee. "You're here to play welcome." The words danced on the edge of his sanity, provoking dread that sharpened their features. What is this place?" Another companion hissed, anxiety dripping from their tone. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we can't linger. We need to keep moving. It might be our only chance." As they continued, cold fingers of fear gripped their insides. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, darting away whenever they turned to confront them. It was as if the darkness held secrets that refused to reveal themselves. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently. It felt as if they stood on the brink of an abyss. The young man clutched the nearest wall, heart pounding in sync with the shuddering chamber as it seemed to breathe. "Move!" he shouted, and they sprinted toward the flickering light, driven by primal instinct. Just before reaching it, an ominous sound erupted behind them, a bone-chilling growl that rumbled through the walls, each syllable like thunder vibrating in their very souls. They dared not look back, each heartbeat driving them further into the blinding light. Bursting into the light, they stumbled into a larger hall. Around them, figures emerged from the shadows, twisted versions of themselves sans the hope they wore like armor. Who are these?" the young man whispered, doubling over in confusion. They were identical yet utterly different, mirror images, shattered reflections of their fears and desires. "Welcome to the nexus of your despair," one figure hissed, a cruel grin twisting its lips. "Here, you will face what you truly are. Do you abandon hope, or will you dare embrace the darkness?" The room echoed with the haunting question, reverberating through their minds. They had come so far, yet the darkest part of them lay ahead. Whispers floated through the crowd of doppelgangers, a sinister sharing of their secrets. "No, I won't fall for this." The young man gasped, fists clenching. Just when he thought resolution pulled him from the brink, a piercing scream shattered the air. One of his friends was lost within the crowd, engulfed by the tormented reflections, leaving behind nothing but their terror. Panic seized him. "We have to stick together," he shouted, but the growing chaos echoed back, drowning out his cries. What horrific truths awaited them in this twisted realm? Were they truly lost, or did a flicker of hope still live within the dark? The moment of truth loomed like a thundercloud ready to unleash its storm. The young man's heart raced, fear coursing through him like ice water. The shadows writhed and pulsated around them, his friends' faces now etched with terror. He scanned the room, trying to catch a glimpse of the familiar within the twisted reflections. "Where did they go?" he croaked, voice barely above a whisper. "Where's the others?" "Here. Over here," came a frantic shout from one of the figures. It was an echo, but unmistakably his friend's voice, twisted and pleading. The air thickened as more doppelgangers emerged, each one a caricature of their group, the mockery palpable. "You think you can save them?" A figure laughed, eyes glinting with malice. "You already lost one. Why not accept the truth, the inevitable?" Shivers ran down his spine. They had to act. His friends needed him, not the ghosts pretending at being them. He took a deep breath. "We can't let despair win." Clenching his fists, he steeled himself and charged toward the one that sounded like his friend. But as he approached, it morphed into something from his deepest nightmares, a grotesque clump of features twisted into a malicious grin. "Are you ready to accept who you really are?" it jeered, its voice echoing cruelly, reverberating off the oppressive walls. The young man stumbled back, breath hitching in his throat. "No. I'm not like that. I refuse to believe it." But with every denial, the room responded in mockery, laughing shadows growing closer. They whispered his failures, his fears, dredging up memories he wanted buried. The pain flooded back like a tsunami, crashing over him. Suddenly, a fierce light broke through the darkness, a spark of warmth in this twisted nightmare. "We need to focus," the woman cried, breaking through the deluge of despair, her voice like a beacon. She grabbed his arm, pulling him closer. "We're still together. We can fight this." There was determination in her eyes, a spark that ignited something within him. "We can break this spell," he shouted, rallying the others. "Think of everything we've overcome. We can't let them tear us apart." The echoes of their fears screamed around them, but the group began to move in unison, focusing on their shared memories, the laughter, the joy, and the fight within them. With each step, the twisted reflections flickered, losing their power. "You think friendship can save you?" one doppelganger shrieked, but the spirit of solidarity wrapped around them like an armor. Then the ground shook violently, and the room split open as a rift of blinding light ripped through the chaos. The doppelgangers shrieked in agony, their forms disintegrating into a waltz of shadows. "Go. Now." the young man urged, but just as they leaped toward the glowing exit, a cold hand grasped his ankle. He fell backward, the light flickering out of reach. Despair darkened the corners of his vision, but he fought against it. "Help!" he yelled, desperation clawing at his voice. His friends extended their hands, poised at the threshold of safety, but an unseen force pulled him deeper into the abyss, whispering sweet lies that echoed in his ears. The shadows swirled around him, promising freedom if he only let go, if he surrendered to the darkness. Without losing his grip, he shouted through the suffocating darkness, "You don't own me. I choose my path." The ground trembled beneath as the weight of his choice hung heavily in the air. Would he be swallowed whole, or could he reclaim his light and emerge from this abyss? As the shadows tightened their grip, he could feel the fight within him wavering. Would his friends pull him back from the edge, or would he become yet another whisper lost within the nexus? His heart pounded so loud, he thought it might drown out the whispers of darkness. Time slowed as the ground beneath him shifted, the cold hand tightening around his ankle like a vice. His breath quickened, panic rising within him. He could see the glimmer of light, his only hope, fading away, growing dimmer with each second. "Look out!" someone shouted, the voice barely reaching him over the cacophony of laughter and despair. He shifted his gaze, just in time to witness more shadows emerging, stretching like claws to grasp at his friends. They were struggling against their own doppelgangers, their faces a mask of horror and determination. The young man wanted to reach out, to shout words of encouragement, to tell them to fight back. But fear gripped his throat tighter than the unseen hand on his ankle. "Don't give in," he yelled, clenching his jaw against the despair clawing at him. "We're stronger together." The woman he had seen earlier, with that fierce determination, shouted at the top of her lungs, "We need to remember who we are." The echoes of her words fluttered around him like a lifeline, and he fought harder against the dark pull, willing his friends to pull together. He could feel his friends' presence, their energy pushing against the shadows. He wasn't alone. A flicker of hope ignited within him. Their combined will was more powerful than the darkness surrounding them, but the shadows were relentless. The doppelgangers laughed, their voices a cruel symphony of mockery. "You think memories can save you?" One cackled, its face morphing into a grotesque replica of his own. "You're nothing without us." "No," he shouted back, feeling a surge of defiance. "You're not real. You're just a twisted reflection of my fears." With a fierce roar, he yanked his leg free, breaking the hold. The shadows hissed, retreating momentarily as he scrambled back towards his friends, his pulse racing. But just as he reached out for their hands, one doppelganger lunged, shoving him hard back into the dark pit that he gasped, but with every ounce of strength, he pushed off the ground and surged forward, propelling himself into the small patch of light that still flickered ahead. "Together. We have to go together," he screamed, pulling at his friends. As their hands locked, a burst of energy surged through the group. The oppressive shadows recoiled, screeching in anger. The light solidified, elongating toward him like a beacon. "Hold on!" he cried, the warmth enveloping them, pulling them forward. They surged ahead, thrusting into the rift that had opened wider, a portal of blinding brightness. Just then, the doppelgangers screamed in anguish, their forms twisting and curling in acidic rage. The young man dared a backward glance, his heart sinking at the sight of their contorted faces filled with hatred and betrayal. "Don't look back," the woman urged, her grip like iron around him. But just as they felt the light surging full, an ice-cold hand shot out from the rift, grabbing his wrist, pulling him painfully back. The strength of that hand was crushing, an unimaginable weight threatening to drag him back into the void. "No!" he screamed, his throat raw, the sound echoing against the walls of the abyss. Well, well," a familiar voice crooned from the shadows, sending chills racing down his spine. "Looks like some of you just can't escape your true selves." The darkness felt heavier now, wrapping around him like chains. "This isn't over," it hissed, as if knowing its grip would never relent easily. Would they break free, or would he fall victim to the very doubts he had fought so hard to dispel? As the clutches of despair tightened, he felt his friends struggling against the pull as well. "Stay strong," the woman shouted, her voice cutting through the darkness. But how much longer could they hold on? The uncertainty gnawed at him, a sick feeling creeping into his gut. Could he save them all, or would they succumb to the shadows? The answer hovered just beyond reach, waiting to plunge them back into the dark. The icy grip on his wrist felt like iron, each second dragging him deeper into a world shadowed by fear. His heart raced, fueled by panic, a primal urge to survive. With wild determination, he yanked his arm, trying to shake off the darkness. "Fight it," the woman said, her voice a fierce reminder of their mission. Her eyes burned with a ferocity that lit a fire within him. He watched her as she wrestled against her own doppelganger, the two struggling, a twisted reflection of anguish and resolve. "Focus!" he shouted, clutching her hand tight, channeling all his will into their bond. The warmth of their connection pulsed between them, pushing back against the cold shadows that threatened to engulf them. "Remember," she urged, the edges of her voice frayed with effort. "Who we are, where we come from, hold on to it." The memories crashed around him, like waves threatening to drown him. Fragments of laughter, sunlight warming his skin, the comfort of friendship. Each memory ignited his spirit, fueling a beacon of hope against the relentless void. Just then, the shadows recoiled, the grip on his wrist loosening. He seized the moment, pulling with all his strength. "Everyone! Now!" He bellowed, the energy surged again, rippling through them. Another voice, one of his friends, broke through the chaos. "Together! We can push them back!" A chorus of voices joined, rising like a battle cry, an anthem of unity against despair. The shadows hissed, their forms buckling under the onslaught of light. For a moment, it felt like freedom lay within their grasp. The shimmering rift widened, glowing with an almost tangible strength. It promised safety, salvation, but the laughter returned, mocking and shrill. "You think you can win?" hissed his doppelganger, its soulless eyes fixed on him. "You're only delaying the inevitable." Sweat dripped from his brow as dread clawed at his insides. Were they truly outpacing the darkness, or were they merely squandering their last moments? "We are more than this," he countered, his voice breaking with raw energy. "We are more than our fears." The shadows responded with fury, lashing out like pent-up storms. One shadow lunged, knocking him off balance, and he stumbled back. A surge of darkness washed over him once more, pulling at his ankles, dragging him back into the void. "Don't let go," she pleaded, her face stricken with terror as she held on, fighting against the tide. Each breath felt like a battle, but somehow he managed to stay tethered to her. Then, he felt a vibration of reality just beneath the surface. A flicker of power, primal and fierce, and he realized it wasn't just the bonds of friendship that fought the shadows. It was belief. "Remember, we've faced worse than this," he shouted, feeling an unshakable resolve swell within him. "We can't let them take us." With that surge of determination, they channeled everything into the light. It pulsed, expanding, forcing shadows to retreat. The chains that bound him began to break, splintering under the weight of their unity, but just as freedom appeared within reach, darkness surged once more, mocking their efforts. "Your past is your prison," it growled. "You can never escape." The air thickened with desperation. Could they truly shut out their shadows? What if their fears were only just beginning to wake from their slumber? A new fear gripped him. What if the battle had just begun? Would the darkness return, stronger and more relentless? As the rift opened again, wider than ever before, he couldn't help but wonder, would they be walking into salvation or a deeper abyss? The chilling laughter echoed once more, and he felt the urge to scream, but he swallowed it down. All that mattered now was the next step, the next moment. What lay beyond the light? Would they find safety, or would they fall into a fate worse than despair? He staggered backward as the shadows surged forward again, a dark tide swallowing the shimmering light of their fragile hope. Panic clawed at his chest, each breath feeling thicker than the last, and just as he thought he'd found his footing, the woman beside him crumpled to her knees, pulling him down with her. "Stay with me," he shouted, desperation coating his words. Her face was pale, glistening with cold sweat, and even in the chaos, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a plea, a spark of fight left to share. A roar erupted from the doppelgangers as they lunged forward, shadows merging, twisting into grotesque shapes that whispered his deepest fears. "You can't hold on forever," they taunted, voices entangled like barbed wire, blood-curdling laughter echoing through the void. His resolve faltered. The shadows threw themselves against their quaking forms, clawing at their sanity. What if they were wrong? What if this light was merely an illusion, a tease that would vanish when they needed it most? He felt the very ground beneath him tremble, cracking and splitting as if it were alive, as if it too were rebelling against their futile resistance. just as a heavy paw of darkness reached for him, thrumming with power that seemed all too familiar, she squeezed his hand harder. "You have to believe." She gasped, the heat of her spirit pushing against the encroaching chill. "Remember who we are. Remember what we stand for." Her words ignited a flicker deep within him, a recollection of warm summer days spent laughing among friends, the unconditional bonds that gave life meaning. The shadows writhed at the mention of unity, faces twisting in fury. They hated this. They hated that their power diminished under the weight of love and community. "Together," he roared, drawing from that flickering fire. "They're only strong when we're apart." The others heard him, their connection rekindled, hands reaching out, a lifeline in a storm. A tremor passed through them as energy surged again. With one final stand, they thrust their collective will into the light, channeling memories, hopes, and dreams into a fierce beam that sliced through the encroaching blackness. The darkness screamed, a cacophony of rage and fear as if their very existence was threatened. But with every ounce of will, they pushed through the chaos, igniting the light that engulfed them. He could practically feel the warm glow tracing up his skin, pulling him towards something brighter. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, twisting into wild forms before dissolving into shadows. Their grip begun to unravel, and for a heartbeat, he thought they'd won. But then a new figure emerged from the darkness, a larger, more monstrous doppelganger, shrouded in swirling black, eyes like bottomless pits fixated on him. "This is far from over," it growled, voice dripping with venom. "You can't escape your past. You're still encumbered by choices made long ago." The fear returned, flooding him like icy water. There was truth buried in those words. No, it couldn't end like this. With the rift widening, offering what appeared to be salvation, he caught a glance at his companions, each one marred by doubt, shadows creeping along their skin like vines of despair. If they weren't careful, the fears would ensnare them once more. He stepped forward, heart racing. "We choose to be free. We will face whatever lies ahead together." Their strength pulsed like a living thing, and he could feel hope swelling with each beat of his heart, pushing the darkness back. But in that moment, he sensed something shifting, the air around them crackling with new energy. A surge of ominous laughter broke through, chilling him to the bone. "Will you? When the truth is revealed, who will be left standing?" As the rift continued to glow, the monstrous figure reached out, tendrils of shadow stretching toward them, beckoning like a dark promise. Would they leap into that light? Or would they succumb to the encroaching darkness, unraveling what little hope they had left? The whispers of truth hung like fog in the air. Confrontation was inevitable. Could they face the darkness within and emerge unscathed? The tension thrummed around them as he clutched her hand tighter, steeling himself for the choice that lay ahead. Where would their flight take them? A fate of light or deeper darkness awaited just beyond the threshold. The ground beneath them pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, a heartbeat of darkness that echoed their dread. A thin layer of fog curled around their feet, thickening with every heartbeat as the monstrous doppelganger loomed closer, its form shifting between grotesque shapes that clawed at their memories. Beads of sweat rolled down his temples, and he could feel her grip tighten on his hand, a tether to the remnants of hope against the encroaching void. "Listen to me," he shouted over the roars of mock laughter that filled the air. "Whatever we face, we do it together. We're stronger united." His voice trembled, but they needed to hear it. They needed to believe it. The monstrous figure laughed, a hollow sound that sent shivers racing down his spine. "Together? Foolish mortals. Your bond is weak. I see the doubt lurking in your minds, the secrets you hide even from yourselves." Its eyes bore into him, deep and relentless, that he took a half step back, fear threatening to swallow him whole as memories surged up, dark and painful. Mistakes made, paths not taken. He felt the shadows creeping back, trying to worm their way into his thoughts, but he pushed them away. No. He wouldn't let those fears claw at him again. That he turned to the woman by his side, whose face reflected the flickering light of their hopes, despite the fury of the darkness around them. "We are not defined by our past," he declared, searching her eyes for the strength he knew she had. We choose who we are going to be right now. A murmur rippled through their group, a hesitant agreement. Their collective energy shimmered, flickering like fireflies against the encroaching night. Yet, he could still feel the shadows clawing at their resolve. Doubt is like a virus, he pressed on, urgency thrumming in his chest. It spreads when nurtured. We have to expel it. Shut them out. She shouted suddenly, her voice carrying over the chaos. Focus on us. Remember our dreams. Remember our love. A tremor of acknowledgement coursed through the others as they locked eyes, grounding one another in their determination. Each of their fears was a thread that could either bind them down or weave a cloak of strength together. With a surge of raw energy, they stood before the rift, a thin layer of shimmering light that pulsed with a warmth that felt both foreign and inviting. The monstrous figure snorted, a gust of shadowy breath sending ripples through the air. You think that light will save you? You're all just a moment away from despair. Maybe, but despair isn't our end, he challenged, stepping confidently toward the rift, feeling a pull deep inside him. The light beckoned, warming his skin. It's just another chapter, and this is where we write a new story. As they surged forward, the shadows tried to cling onto them, wrapping around their limbs like chains meant to drag them back. He felt the chill, the suffocating fear, and in that moment, he pictured each memory as a delicately spun thread, caught in the relentless wind of doubt. He yanked his focus back to the warmth of the light, countless hands joined, pushing into the glow, and he felt her presence beside him, vibrant and alive. The knot of fear inside him unraveled just a little at her strength. Together, they were more than just two souls, they were a collective roar of hope that pierced the shroud of darkness. Suddenly, the shadows screamed in agony, a cacophony that filled the space with desperation. Tendrils recoiled, and for a heartbeat, it seemed like the light would swallow the darkness whole, but the monstrous figure lunged, extending one shadowy hand, clawed and dripping with malice. Let us see if you hold on when the truth is unveiled. You think this confrontation is about survival? It laughed, and the sound chilled his blood. What is it hiding? He whispered, heart pounding. That laughter turned into an echo within his mind, grazing against old, tender scars. As the first wave of light surged forward, wrapping them like a protective cocoon, a sudden halt made time stretch like taffy. And just when he thought they had reached salvation, the chilling voice whispered once more, the truth will come and you will wish you had never arisen. The light began to flicker, and panic clawed at him anew. What truth? What nightmare awaited them on the other side? Would they be able to withstand what was to come? With a heart pounding against his ribs, he clung tight to the hand in his, knowing it would be the only thing to anchor him as they plunged into uncertainty. Would the truth clear the fog, or would it unleash a darkness that no light could ever conquer? They plunged into the blinding light, a rush of warmth folding around them like a parental hug. The shadows screamed, their wails fading into a bitter echo, and for a moment, all was silent. No darkness, no doubts. Just light. But it flickered, alive and breathing around them. As they emerged, the friends found themselves in a vast, cerulean field stretching endlessly beneath a brilliant blue sky, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom they just escaped. The ground felt solid, reassuring. It was an expanse of beauty, but still, a hint of tension threaded through the atmosphere. We made it, the young man gasped, overwhelming relief flooding through him as he searched for his companions, affirming their presence. Every face shone with disbelief and cautious hope. Is it truly over? The woman asked, glancing around, taking in the serene blue horizon stretching into infinity. Look! Another companion shouted, pointing at a dark gathering cloud on the far side of the field. The distant shadows churned like a tempest, swirling despite the radiant environment. The young man felt it claw at his spirit. The darkness wasn't defeated, it was simply waiting. You think this is over? It won't end like this, a voice echoed from the depths of the cloud. The monstrous doppelganger-esque spectre emerged, formidable and looming, its eyes glowing ominously, as if lit from within by malevolence. No! He yelled, adrenaline surging anew. We faced you in the dark, we won to let you drown us in despair anymore. And just as the shadows lunged forward, his friends instinctively formed a tight circle, gripping each other's hands. Fear can't control us. The woman yelled, fierce determination surging through her voice. They stood united, a wall of strength against the oncoming storm. A memory washed over them like a refreshing tide, the laughter shared, their fleeting moments of joy a contrast to the heavy despair that loomed. The memories were their strength. You are not the sum of our fears. He called out, amplifying the force of their unity. The monstrous figure screeched, thrashing its limbs as tendrils of darkness lunged toward them, eager to tear apart their bond. But they held firm, their combined light radiating brilliance in the face of chaos. We stand together. Another friend shouted. We embrace the truth. The warmth intensified, swirling around them, and with a powerful push, they directed the glow toward the advancing darkness. The light surged forward like a tidal wave, crashing through the shadows with righteous fury. No. The creature howled, shadows twisting violently, trying to wrap around their light. But the deeper the friends focused on their shared memories, the brighter they shone. They envisioned past successes, flickering lanterns guiding them through the storms of life. Every sip of laughter, every shared tear, each moment of support coalesced into a singular force. The merging energy surged outward, splintering the nightmare before them. A brilliant beam of light erupted, splitting the incoming shadows apart, tearing through the depths of fear, driving pain back into oblivion. Feel the truth. He shouted, joyous defiance in his voice. We are not alone. The monster howled one last time, its form contorting as the light enveloped it. Finally, pulling it apart like paper in a flood, it disintegrated into nothingness, a whisper lost to the winds. The companions, breathless and trembling from their harrowing journey, stood still. The field around them felt alive, colors blossoming and shimmering under the sunlight. Did we really? The woman began, hope blooming in her chest. Yes. Another companion shouted, their faces brightening with joy. We did it. We really did. And as they basked in the glow of their victory, an exhilarating realization settled within them. They had not only escaped the darkness, they had meaningful choices ahead. The future stretched wide and uncharted, ready for their embrace. Together, they could create new memories, banishing shadows forever. Moments later, a breeze swept across the field, gentle and warm, carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers, a promise of new beginnings. Smiling, they shared knowing glances, a deep connection forged through their trials. Here, in this sunlit space, their bond felt strong enough to weather any storm. With vibrant hearts, they turned toward the shimmering horizon and dashed forward, laughter blending with the fresh air around them. Step by step, they moved into their new story, brave and unbroken. But before they could take off, the young man turned back, looking into the now empty space where darkness once had dominion. Thank you, he whispered, perhaps a farewell, or perhaps acknowledging the bitter lessons learned, and together, they ran toward their destiny, navigating their newfound freedom, hearts open to what awaited them. Now, this is your moment. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales of triumph and resilience. Smash that like button now to keep the love flowing for the algorithm. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this victorious conclusion. Only the true fans understand how vital it is to support our journey through every story. Let us keep this wild adventure going.